Welcome back to another episode of From Classroom to Home. I'm Lizbeth Stone. If you have ever wondered, is my child where they need to be in reading? You're not alone. It's one of the most common questions parents ask their child's teacher. In today's episode, we're going to walk through what reading development looks like in kindergarten, first, and second grade. We'll talk about what teachers often do when they begin to have concerns about a child's reading and what parents can do if they're wondering whether their child is progressing as expected. We'll also share some simple ways you can support your child's reading at home. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Alex, I'm really happy to have you on the show here today. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Alex Needle. I'm a reading specialist and a curriculum designer for McGraw Hill Publishing Company, and I've been working in education for over 10 years.
I'm really excited about our conversation that we're going to have today about reading. I think this is something that parents really want to know about. And I think it could be helpful if you could start by just sharing how reading skills typically develop from kindergarten through second grade.
For kindergarten, the big picture is really moving kids from understanding how speech is represented in print. So, understanding concepts of what letters are, what their names are, the sounds of the letters, how to handle books. Moving into first grade is really when we're pushing readers into becoming more accurate and automatic with their reading. So essentially more what we would consider fluent reading. So being able to read words and short books fairly independently and have it sound more and more like oral speech as they're reading. And then once we get to second grade, by the end of second grade, we really want kids to be more strategic and have stamina. So being able to work through longer text, reading chapter books more independently, and really apply strategies and being able to comprehend more complex text, especially thinking about like nonfiction, being able to apply strategies in terms of like understanding text structures, being able to determine a main idea of a text and get them ready for the more sophisticated work of reading in third grade and beyond.
So I'm curious, at the end of kindergarten, where should a child be in their reading?
We want kids to absolutely be able to recognize and name all uppercase and lowercase letters of the alphabet. We want them to be able to produce the correct sounds for those letters. We want them to be able to blend sounds together to read words. So we're looking at words with like 3 to 4 letters in them, what we would call CVC or consonant vowel consonant words. In addition to high frequency words that we encounter in text constantly, small words like the, of, to, words that to us are easy and recognizable right away, but can be challenging for children because they don't follow typical sound spelling correspondences. And the kinds of books that we want a kindergartner to be able to read by the end of kindergarten are those short, decodable texts like some Dr. Seuss books like Hop on Top that have just like a couple lines of text on the page.
So it sounds like the expectation is that kids are doing some reading at the end of kindergarten. I guess that's a little bit different from maybe when we were in school in terms of expectations that kids are sort of reading.
I would say with the Common Core standards, the expectations have been raised since we were children. I would say if your kindergartner is not reading emergent text by the end of kindergarten, I wouldn't jump to panic mode. And I would assure all my parent friends of that. The main takeaways are we definitely want understanding what the letters are and the letter sounds. But ideally, judging by the Common Core standards, which is what all public schools are using, we do want kids to be able to read some short, simple, emergent reader text with a little bit of adult support.
And what about first grade? So, what are the important skills children should typically have by the end of first grade?
First grade is a huge year for reading development. That is when we're moving kids from, those very short, simple words to actually like reading real text more fluently. And when I say fluently, in a way that sounds like speaking and not kind of sounding out one word at a time. We want kids to be able to decode or correctly sound out regularly spelled one syllable words. So shop, flip, and words with some long vowel spellings. For example, cake or dream. Generally, schools are starting to monitor and assess kids' oral reading fluency. So when I say that, I mean children are given a passage of text, so one page, that's written at an appropriate first grade level using words like the ones I described. And we want kids to be able to read that passage fluently. So not having to sound out every single word, but pretty much being able to read most of those words automatically by sight.
And what about second grade? What are the key reading skills that you would want a second grader to have by the end of the year?
So to be a successful reader in second grade, kids really have to have a strong foundation in all the common spelling patterns. And a huge one for second grade is really being able to read multisyllabic words fluently, words like compound words like butterfly or rainbow, in addition to words with common prefixes and suffixes. Having the strategies and the foundation to work through those longer words, which then allows them to read longer text fluently.
We've been talking about typical development, where we would hope children should be, but when might a teacher become concerned about a child's reading development?
So in kindergarten, we don't really want to jump in to diagnose anything early in kindergarten because the expectation is that not all children have had an experience at school yet. So they're coming in and learning how to understand the routines of school for the first time. So generally speaking, in kindergarten, I would advise teachers to, at the mid-year point, take stock of which children are having trouble recognizing and naming uppercase and lowercase letters. So that is not even including the sounds yet, but just the ability to look at the letter M and know that that's the letter M. That is an indicator of a child who probably needs additional support and whose parents you probably want to notify that the child should be receiving additional support at school. Closer to the end of the year, we're looking at kids who are having trouble mastering those letter sound correspondences. By the end of kindergarten, we want them to at least have like solid letter sound fluency for most of the uppercase and lowercase letters. So we're looking for not just like the accuracy of understanding that the letter B says the sound B, but that kids are able to do that with increasing automaticity. So not having to stop and think about it for too long. A first grade teacher might start to have some concerns if a child is demonstrating difficulty with letter sound correspondence early on in first grade. That is an indicator that the child should have support because really it's an expectation that children are coming into first grade with pretty solid letter sound correspondence. So by the middle of first grade, that is when we're really starting to assess oral reading fluency. And so there are target benchmarks for that assessment. If a child is below the target benchmarks for the school district, the teacher really should be either with their team or with the school's reading specialist or whatever the school support system is investigating the reason why the child is not meeting those fluency benchmarks and determine, is it because the child is having trouble reading the words correctly or decoding the words? So if that's the case, that the child is having trouble reading pretty regularly spelled first grade words, that is a cause for extra attention and support for that child and communication home.
And then for second grade, where would some concerns be for second graders?
For second grade, children have to make a big leap that year to be able to read longer and more complex text by the end of the year. So early in fall, if a child is not reading those one syllable words with regular spellings accurately and fluently, that is a cause for giving that child extra support, extra attention. By the middle of the year, all public schools have to give universal screeners, and using that reading fluency data as your indicator of whether a child maybe needs to be looked at closer for more support. We want to make sure kids are meeting the benchmarks that the schools designate. So if a child is not meeting those benchmarks, that is the flag to look a little closer. The teacher working with their colleagues and other support staff in the school to determine, does the child need more intensive support with decoding or reading the words correctly? Or is the child an accurate reader, able to sound out a word, but they're not fluent yet, and determining the correct approach to support that child based on what they noticed with that additional investigation into their data?
So it seems like teachers really have built in systems to really help them stay on top of where children are in reading so that there isn't really a lot of guessing going on there, that there are actual assessments that are given, but it's sort of just like an opportunity for teachers to be able to take a look and see where a student is. I'm curious, what does a teacher do if they have concerns? What's the next step for the teacher?
Schools have systems of support whereby teachers can meet with their grade level peers or other support staff in the building, such as reading specialists or intervention specialists, instructional coaches, your school administration. Basically, getting together a group of people with some more expertise to help the teacher brainstorm ideas for looking at the data that they have collected on the child. So it is important to gather your resources at your school, make sure that you are diagnosing what the root cause is of the reading difficulty, and then selecting an intervention that actually meets those needs.
I think parents are always wondering what they can be doing at home to help support their child with reading. Can you share two or three different activities that you think would be helpful for a parent to be doing at home with the child?
I would say for kindergarten, because that, letter awareness is so important. Some easy things that you could do at home are uppercase and lowercase letter matching, especially, those tricky letters like the lowercase b or lowercase d or lowercase t. If you have magnetic letters, having kids match those up is an easy, nice, quiet activity, even if it's a little messy. If you don't have magnetic letters, it's easy enough to just write them on post-it notes or on little cards for the child to manipulate and match them up together. I would say also for kindergarten, that speech to print matchup is very important. So if you read to your child at home, making sure that you're pointing to the words as you're reading out loud, and occasionally asking the child to do like a letter scavenger hunt or a word hunt in a book. So, for example, if you're reading to your child, you might say, "Oh, I see a letter S on this page. Can you point to it?" That's an easy way to engage them and make them feel like they're part of the reading, even if they're not the ones doing the reading. In terms of first grade, really, we want to be like building up that fluency and automaticity for them and helping them, solidify those decoding or word reading skills. So some examples might be doing anything involving word building. So what I mean by that is like, again, going back to magnetic letters, using letters to make a word. Like, for example, oh, like, could you make the word cake? Okay, the child makes the word cake with the letters. Oh, what happens if you change the C to a B? What's that word? And they should do it and then be able to read, oh, that's the word bake. So, simple games using manipulatives, making words with letters. Another suggestion that I would have is echo reading. So that is when the adult, if they're reading to the child, might read a phrase or a sentence out loud from a book and then point to it and say, oh, can you try it this time? So essentially, the child is echoing how the adult read the sentence. And what that does is it models, how we make our reading sound like speech, and then gives the child enough support that they've heard it. They're, matching that oral language that they heard with the print that's on the page, and then they attempt it themselves. So echo reading is a great strategy, that you can build into just reading at home. And then for second graders, I would definitely emphasize trying to bring in more nonfiction into reading at home, especially transitioning into third grade. kids are really expected to gain more knowledge from the text that they're reading. And nonfiction text also often offers some more complex vocabulary to challenge the kids and get them to be encountering more multisyllabic words. And then finally, for second grade, or honestly, any of them, repeated reading is one of the best research-based strategies for building reading fluency. So repeated reading just means reading a text more than one time and getting kids to read it out loud. So that's definitely something I would suggest that doesn't take any extra prep work or extra materials. It's just reading a book more than once.
What would be one thing that you hope parents take away from our conversation today?
I would say that I hope parents understand teachers are doing a lot of work monitoring your child. They care deeply about your child's reading development and are keeping an eye on them. And they are your partner in helping your child reach their potential. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to them because they want to hear from you. And if they voice any questions or concerns, it is not meant to be critical of you at all. They just want your child to feel good about themselves as a reader and get to where they need to get to be successful for the next grade level. So your child's teacher is your partner, and you're all on the same team to help them become the best reader that they can be.
Alex, it was so great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It was great chatting with you.
We hope that today's conversation helped you feel a little more connected to what's happening in your child's classroom and the important role you play at home. If you're looking for simple and fun ways to support your child's reading and math skills at home, visit our website, slamhomelearning.org, for free games, activities, and videos. Until next time.